YouTube crew, how's it going? It's Multiplier here. Today I'm answering a question I got asked, and also something I've been asked a fair few times too. So I thought let's make a video about it. Also, it says here maybe it's nice for you to make a video on it. So I thought, yes, let's do that. Start of a new series answering viewer questions live. Well, not live. I'm going to edit it right now, but answering it in the video form starting now. Let's dive straight in. I am actually here. Hello. Hey there, Multiplier. I hope you're having a nice day. I hope you're having a nice day too. So it's a beautiful day here. I hope it is where you are also. I have the Beyerdynamic DT990 250 ohm headphones, which are... that's really bad. The nicer versions of these are the DT770 Pros 250 ohm models. So he's got the nicer headphones than these ones. Also industry standard ones. And I was searching the web about preamps. Mostly people on forums talk about volume, but I wonder if it improves sound quality or recording quality. First of all, what is a preamp? Now, we really have to split this conversation into two halves. The recording side, which would be, say, using a microphone or a guitar or any form of recording, and split that up from the actual process of listening to what you want to listen to, which would be through the headphones. So it's really important we separate between listening and recording. And since you mentioned headphones, which would be the listening side of things, let's start there. So let me do some pointing now. My sound card is a Focusrite Scarlett 6i6, the red box over there. That is connected via USB to my computer. So my computer sends a digital signal to the sound card, which then converts it into an analog signal, converting this digital into analog. Remembering that headphones and speakers need an analog signal. If I plugged my headphones, which in this case are the Sennheiser HD650s, if I plugged them directly into the sound card via the headphone jack, sound would come out, yes, but it would be too quiet. Even if I had the gain, this will do this way too small, even if I had that turned up to like 80 or 90%, or it's too small, I'm going to do it. Even if I had that turned up to 80 or 90%, it just still wouldn't be loud enough. In fact, it'd be way too quiet. Therefore, I need to increase the volume, the gain, I can't remember the technical name. Basically, you need to increase the analog volume of the sound you're hearing so you can actually hear it at a level you like. So that's why you need a headphone amp, sometimes called a preamp or a headphone preamp, other times just simply called a headphone amp. And in my case, it would be this guy here. So the headphone output on my Focusrite Scarlett 6i6 is going out through this wire here, sort of going through the Valley of Doom in between my monitor and my Ableton Push 2, going through there, and then it's going into a headphone amplifier called Headbox S, which is a very cheap and not very good headphone preamp, but it's kind of good enough. It does the job. And therefore, if I set, say, the volume on my Headbox preamp to be maybe 50 or 60%, and then the volume, the gain on my sound card to be 50 or 60% too, overall, it's loud enough for me to sort of get excited. And so let's now talk about quality. If I could somehow increase the quality of what I'm listening to, theoretically, I could then make better decisions about what I'm creating. Increasing the quality of what you're listening to won't affect directly what you're making because you're making it in the computer, but what it can do is allow you to better hear what you're making and therefore make better decisions. For example, if you're doing bass sound design, you can't really use your laptop speakers because it's not telling you enough information about the bass you're creating. And so you'd be guessing or simply being naive to all those sub-frequencies, those bass frequencies that you're trying to create. And so the question then becomes, do I need a headphone amp? Do I need one of these, or can I plug my headphones directly into my sound card? Now there's an important detail here which is very intelligent to include, and that is the ohms. 250 ohms, just like it says on my headphones here, 250 ohms, or ohm in this case. Ohms is a measure of resistance, electrical resistance. And what you find is a headphone with more ohms or more resistance. I think the technical term in headphone land is impedance. The more impedance or the more resistance the headphone has, the more energy you need to drive it, and therefore the louder the volume you need coming out of your sound card and amp. So if you have, say, an 80 ohm set of headphones, you might not need a headphone amp or a headphone amp, whereas if you had, say, a 600 ohm headphone, you definitely would need a headphone amp, because a 600 ohm headphone has more resistance and therefore needs more power driving it. I'm going to just get off my screensaver. Bing! We're back. Yes. Now, 250 ohms is about medium resistance. Medium resistance, which is definitely resistance, but medium resistance for a set of studio headphones. And therefore, from my experience, you almost certainly will need some form of headphone amp. Now, to answer your question more directly, because you haven't actually given me the ohms, which is the information I need, 250 ohms, you will almost certainly need a headphone amp. Because I've been using, these are my old set of headphones, the DT770 Pros with 250 ohms. These used to be my main headphones. So I know all about these and how much power you need to drive them at sort of sensible and not so sensible listening levels. Now, if you have something like a Focusrite Scarlett sound card, or any other normal sort of one, normal, like cheap to medium priced sound card, if you plug these directly into the headphone hole and you crank it to 100% on the headphone preamp, it will be loud enough to hear what's going on and you could kind of produce, but it wouldn't be loud enough to get you excited. And also, you'd be running into a problem. And that problem is you shouldn't really be using amplifiers with a gain control, or that's basically what this is, a volume control. You shouldn't really be using those anywhere near 100%. Like some of them you can kind of get away with at 70 or 80 or 90%, but as soon as you start cranking these to 100, that's when you're cranking them as hard as they can possibly go. And that's when you start to run into potential quality issues. You'll start to hear some noise, maybe some saturation or distortion, and therefore, if you're having to crank these things right to the very limit, what you might be hearing is more, in fact, almost certainly you will be, what you'll probably be hearing is saturation, distortion, and noise that isn't actually in what you're creating. Now, this can actually sound quite nice sometimes, but that's not what you want. When you're producing music, you want to be hearing as precisely as possible what you're creating. You don't want to think there's saturation on your sound if there's not. And therefore, if you have to crank everything to the loudest possible level to make it usable, that's a sign you need more power. So you'll need one of these sorts of things, a headphone amp. As I say, this is the Headbox S, very cheap and does the job. Truth be told, when you start to get it above 60, 70% or 80%, you do start to hear the noise floor come up, and especially at maximum volume, you start to hear a little bit of saturation or distortion. So it's definitely not the best and it's not the most powerful, but it does do the job. I think if you have the money for a $200 or $300 one of these, which would be, this is like $60 or $70 or something. If you have the money for a nicer one, go for it, great. I'm sure I'll be upgrading at some stage. But saying that, providing you know the limitations of these things, it's absolutely fine. I mean, if you run this thing where I do, say 50 or 60%, and then say run your sound card, gain control at, I don't know, 50, 60%, that's absolutely fine because you're not pushing it to the very extreme, and therefore you don't hear the limitations of this thing. I mean, yes, technically speaking, there's a touch of noise, but then again, that touch of noise is somewhat cancelled out by the high resistance headphones, so it sort of balances out. And providing you know it's there and you don't push it too hard, you can certainly work around these things. So yes, basically, you will need some form of headphone amp, which won't directly affect the quality of what you're creating, but it will indirectly affect the quality because you'll be able to better hear what you're creating and therefore make better decisions. Fantastic. So let's now talk about the other side of this, which is recording quality. Creaky floor. Now, as you can probably imagine, I record mostly a vocal sound, and the vocal sound in question is my voice, which sounds like that. And it's basically voiceover recording or tutorial voice recording, vocal recording, if you like, which all happens through a microphone. Although for this particular video, I'm not using that one. I've got a little Zoom H1 off to the side, so I can sort of move around here, and now I'm on the left. I can sort of, now I'm on the right-hand side of things, but that's not really relevant to the question. So Focus multiplier, you can do this. Focus indeed. So when I want the best quality possible, I'm using this as my microphone, an Electro Voice RE20, one of the industry standards, and it also looks really cool. So what happens here is this goes into two separate preamps. Remember, a preamp increases the volume, the analog volume, going through the cable. If I plugged this, the microphone, directly into my sound card, which I could do, it's got the ports on it, so I could, if I wanted to, plug the microphone directly into the sound card, it'd be way too quiet. In fact, it'd be so quiet that it would be basically unusable. Actually, that's not true. It wouldn't be completely unusable, but what I would have to do is turn up the amp. So inside the sound card here, there are these things called preamps, or think of them as amps, a way to increase the gain or the volume. I'd have to turn that pretty much to the max and then also turn it up crazy loads in the software side of things, which brings me on to the conversation of signal to noise ratio, the most important part of recording something or getting a highest quality recording quality, the highest possible recording quality. Do the sentence with good words and sentence structure. If you want the highest recording quality, you want the best signal to noise ratio possible. The signal being your voice or whatever you're recording, and the noise being, well, you know what noise is, and noise could be coming from a few different sources. Could be coming from a fan on in the room, could be coming from a lawnmower outside, could be coming from an ice cream truck outside, could be coming from many places, could also be coming from places like your amps. If you're having to turn up the gain, or the volume sort of thing, on all your amps, like there's a volume here, there's a volume there. If you're having to turn them to 100% or 80 or 90%, there will be noise introduced from that amplification process. So, in fact, if you have one of these, it's worth sort of experimenting with this, and it should be able to hear that noise come in. So from about 70 or 80% onwards, depending on the amp you have, once you get it higher than that, you start to introduce a lot more noise than was in there originally. Not to mention, even before this amplification process, there will be some electrical noise coming from, or just sort of noise in general from just the microphone, although it will be quite quiet. Probably. Either way, the important concept behind recording quality is the signal to noise ratio. Remember, you can always turn it up later in software. In fact, you can also remove noise in software. So to some extent, if you have good denoising tools, it's not too much of a big deal how you do it. But of course, if you want the highest quality possible, you don't want to have to remove all this noise, especially noise that isn't consistent. I'll say it one more time because it is the key idea behind recording quality. You want the best signal to noise ratio possible. So what microphone preamps do, such as this guy here, the Friedenstein VAS Mic Pre, what these do, such as this one, what these do is increase the volume of the sound going in, and providing you're not pushing it too far, broadly speaking, it increases the volume of the signal without introducing any additional noise, therefore giving you a better signal to noise ratio. Now, it's a bit of a balancing act because they won't introduce zero noise. They'll always introduce a little bit, but it's trying to find that balance. For example, I know for this particular guy here, the Friedenstein VAS Mic Pre, I know how hard I can push it before the noise starts to get exponentially more noisy. You find that as you start to sort of run anything through it, there'll be a little bit of noise introduced, just a tiny amount, and then as you turn it up and up and up and up, it sort of, the noise will get slightly higher, but not much higher. And then as you get right near, normally 70 or 80% upwards, that's when, as you go 5% more on the gain, you'll get like 5 times as much noise. So the noise sort of goes like a graph. So in general, you want to keep the levels of your mic pre's below 75% approximately. And if you do, and you also use the right sorts of cables and stuff, which is a whole separate conversation, what you can do with a microphone preamp is simply make it louder, introducing almost any additional noise. And furthermore, in general, the noise it will add is quite easy to remove in software if you have good denoising tools, because it's a sort of very clean noise, if I could really call it that. It's a sort of simple noise. It's a or a sort of noise, which is easy to remove. Software is really good at it. Whereas the noise of, say, an ice cream truck going down the street, that's much more difficult to remove. Yes, you could remove it manually using something like Isotope RX, spectral repair, and you definitely can, but that's a manual process. You have to do it manually. Anybody got time for that? Whereas with sort of like consistent noise, simple noise, you can remove that in one giant go with a click of a button, blink, and it's removed. Super simple, Fantastic. Now you may be wondering how exactly I've got all this plugged in. How do I have my microphone routed through various preamps and stuff? Remember, this is the headphone preamp, and therefore we've got nothing to do, in this case, with the recording side of things. So the very first part of the signal chain is the signal or the sound source, such as my voice, I am a robot, and then it goes into the microphone, the Electro Voice RE20. There is then a cable, an XLR cable going out the back down into a cloud lifter. Picture on the screen now. Now this cloud lifter looks a little bit strange because there's no knobs or buttons on it, but what it's doing is microphone preamping. It's basically a preamp for a microphone, but with no controls on it. I can't remember precisely how much gain increase it does, but it's really cool. It's really simple. You just sort of plug it into your microphone and it increases the gain. It's basically a preamp. Yeah, it's a microphone preamp. So that increases the volume or the gain a little bit, which then goes further down the signal chain. Then it goes into this little box here, the Relentik VAS Mic Pre, which increases the gain even more. First of all, I have to turn on the phantom power button here. It says P48 for some reason. Oh, because of 48 volts, that sends phantom power through the XLR cable to make the cloud lifter do cloud lifting, volume increase, gain increase, amplification. And then what I do is I turn the gain on my Relentik VAS to about, bumped into the chair, to about 60-65% or so. 48 gain, apparently, whatever that is. So I've figured out where I like it to increase the volume, and then these sort of meters flash away, and that's cool too. So the sound is amplified by the cloud lifter and then the Relentik VAS. Then it goes into this guy over here, my sound card, the Focusrite Scarlett 6i6. Importantly though, this is a very important detail. The Scarlett 6i6 does actually have microphone preamps built in. That's what these little twiddly dudes are there. So if you wanted to, you could have the signal get even louder using the mic pre's in the Scarlett 6i6. But remember what I said about preamps. Whenever you use them, it will introduce some noise. It might be a small amount, might be a lot, but it will introduce some noise. But the signal coming in is already loud enough. I already have two microphone preamps, remember, the cloud lifter and the Relentik VAS. So I don't need to do any more gain increases and any more amplification. And therefore, I've used this type of cable, which I think is a TRS cable, balanced TRS maybe. I'm not a super expert on cables. So I've used a balanced TRS cable instead of the XLR, and therefore the Scarlett 6i6 doesn't actually activate the mic pre-circuitry. If I'd used an XLR cable to connect the preamp here into the Scarlett 6i6, then even if I had the gain set to 0, the preamp circuitry inside here would still be activated. So I'd be introducing additional noise, which would be bad and unnecessary because I've already got the signal loud enough using my existing amps. And so let's get back to the question more directly. Now we've established a few concepts. So recording quality, it's all about having the best signal to noise ratio possible. And what you'll find is better amps, better preamps, better mic preamps will introduce less noise while giving you more gain. So effectively giving you a better signal to noise ratio. And therefore, you might benefit from a better mic preamp if your mic preamps are the biggest source of noise, since a better or sometimes more expensive preamp will give you a better signal to noise ratio, effectively allowing you to introduce less noise while giving you the same gain. Also, technically speaking, some of the better, more super fancy ones will do additional, sometimes quite nuanced things to the sound, such as compression, saturation, and so on. But in the normal world, it's really all about this signal to noise ratio. You don't need to spend thousands on these preamps, but you might need to spend a few hundred on the whole system. So spend a few $100s getting some sufficiently good preamps. For example, this guy here. So this is probably the one I'd recommend as the best. In fact, probably quite a few people do, as the best budget, but definitely sufficiently good preamp for microphones and so on. Yeah, Behringer Tube Ultra Gain Mic 100. Keep it 100. So lit. Vacuum tube preamplifier with limiter. So yeah, this is, the only reason I don't use it now is because it broke, so I thought let's upgrade a little bit. So I upgraded to the VAS Mic Pre. But genuinely, the difference between these two is extremely small and certainly not noticeable compared to everything else involved in the recording process. So to be honest, this is all you really need. If you get one of these and set it up right, you'll get a much better result than most people will, because most people who even get nice ones don't really set them up perfectly. And I'm sure even I don't have it set up 100% perfectly, but I figured out how to make it work. I've got a good enough signal coming in, and then I also have a whole bunch of software magic and wizardry I always do to my microphone signal to make it sound super rad and super dope. But yeah, this would be the one I recommend if you're not really sure. The Tube Ultra Gain Mic Pre 100. It's super good, and it did break, but I mean, I genuinely use my microphone stuff all day, every day. I used it for a few years, and also I traveled with this one, which I probably shouldn't do, like just flying and stuff. But whole separate story. That put that back in the freeform fun zone, and circling back again, finally to the question. Yes, when you're recording things, the quality of your preamps will pretty directly affect the quality of what you're creating. Whereas on the listening side, such as headphones, it will more potentially, at least, indirectly affect it. And finally, kind of related to this, sort of tangentially related, off on a tangent, but related. So similar but different. So tangentially related, the difference between, say, a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 sound card, which is pretty much the industry standard entry-level sound card, same, to be honest, same sort of circuitry as the more expensive ones anyway. The difference between one of these in sound quality and your built-in sound card, say in your Macintosh computer or a PC computer, personal computer, the difference in quality between these and your computer ones, computer sound cards, assuming your computer's not really old, is extremely small. It's only if you've got a super old computer where you start to hear a difference in quality between one of these and your computer sound card. Yes, there's a tiny difference. And if you've got really good ears and you've got really good headphones and you really know what you're listening to, you could probably tell them apart. But to be honest, in the real world, real people, real ears, real headphones, real scenarios, real situations, #real talk, you won't hear a difference in sound quality between this and your built-in sound card on your computer. Again, assuming your computer's not 15 years old. If you've got like a 15-year-old computer, the sound cards weren't very good back then. But the modern ones are sufficiently good. Also, I suppose, since somebody may ask in the comments below about this, am I upgrading it? Short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer, not quite sure when. Even longer answer still. Not in a rush, but I certainly will do, because it's, as I say, it does the job of this headphone preamp. Is definitely noisy when you start to crank it, but as I say, it does do the job, and it doesn't directly affect the quality of the output. So providing you know not to crank it, and you know there's going to be a subtle amount of noise introduced from this, like I'm talking really quiet, by the way, with this noise floor. It's basically good enough. And the big problem with headphone preamps is that I've no idea which one to get. Do you spend £250? Do you spend £150? Do you spend £1,000? Do you spend 10,000? Well, I'm not going to spend £10,000, but I've just no idea what price point to jump in at, because the prices go bananas, and just sort of like banana land with what's going on with the prices. Like some are this expensive, like what's going on there? Why is that so expensive? And another one's this expensive, and there's no logic to dictate which of the ones you should go for. And then you've also got the problem where whenever you're looking at headphone, in fact, this is really important knowledge actually, whenever you're looking at headphone preamps or headphone amplifiers, you've got to really understand what that amplifier is trying to do. If you look at a headphone amplifier from the world of audiophiles, some of those audiophiles actually want a more pleasing sound from the preamp. So some of these preamps, some of the expensive ones, will actually saturate the sound and give it a nice quality to what you're listening to that doesn't actually exist in the original sound source, because it's doing nice. Do that sentence better. Some of the really expensive headphone amplifiers actually process the sound, not using digital, but using analog. They actually process the sound to make it sound nicer. So people listening, just general listening, have a more enjoyable experience. It's normally doing tube saturation and so on. But in the world of producing things, we don't actually want that. We want to be hearing the most accurate representation of the original possible. Yes, that's what some audiophiles want, but that's not what other audiophiles want. And it's really impossible to work out, right, which headphone amps don't color the sound and which ones do. And it's like, what's going on? Confusing. So I haven't really figured it out yet. So yes, if anyone's a super ninja at headphone amps and knows which are the medium priced or even the expensive ones, probably we'll go for medium priced. If anyone knows any of the medium priced headphone amps that don't color the sound, definitely don't color the sound, do send me an email. Your email's in the description below, because I definitely want to know. I think I kind of picked one, talking to someone via email, which I will include words about now and pictures. So I kind of might choose one of these, because he figured out that these two could probably do the job. But I still haven't quite done the research properly, because as I say, this still does the job. So not super hyped about spending money if it's not going to affect my quality of output or my quality of experience drastically. But yes, there you go. Video complete. That has been a long video, but good. I liked it. Lots of fun. Crikey, let's look at the record time on my microphone there. In fact, I am on the left. It's pretty fun, isn't it? Whoop. I'm on the left. I'm on the left. I'm now behind you. That's the fun experiences of the Zoom H1. This guy here, the recording microphone. I'll put you back. Anyway, that is it. My name has been Multiplier, and I will catch you guys on the flippity flip. Can you see me? I don't know.